I bought Dad a recliner, then stopped saving my parents' lives. Birthdays are supposed to be a soft spot in the calendar, a reminder that you belong somewhere to someone. Mine felt different this year. I thought maybe if I showed up with something thoughtful, something that mattered, it might finally tip the scale. So I spent weeks setting money aside, skipping dinners out, turning down a coworker's invitation to drinks. By the time Dad's birthday rolled around, I had enough to buy him a brand new recliner, the one he'd been circling in the furniture catalog for months, but kept saying was too much. The delivery guys wrestled it through the doorway and set it down in the living room, still wrapped in plastic. I peeled it open myself, like unwrapping proof of my love. I imagined him sitting there, feet up, dozing off with the game on. A little comfort for a man who had spent his life complaining about his aching back. He looked at the chair, nodded once, and sat down slowly, testing the recline. For a second, I thought maybe I'd done it. Maybe I'd finally bought my way into his approval. Then he glanced at me and said as casually as if he were ordering another beer, "I still wish you were more like your sister. She's married, she's normal." I laughed a sharp, nervous sound, waiting for the punchline. But there wasn't one. Mom chimed in from the couch, not looking up from the TV. "We don't brag about you. There's nothing to brag about." The room went silent, except for the announcer's voice droning through the baseball game. I just stood there, the receipt folded in my back pocket, my hands still smelling of packaging tape. I thought I'd feel anger, the kind that makes your chest rise and fall too fast. Instead, I felt nothing. Just emptiness, like someone had cracked a window in my chest and let all the air out. That's the thing about being the disappointment. People assume you're used to it, that it rolls off your back. But it doesn't. It seeps in layer by layer until one day you realize you're see-through. Present, but invisible. And in that silence between the recliner creaking under his weight and Mom flipping the channel, I understood something I should have seen years ago. I've been holding this family together with tape. They didn't even notice. They didn't even want me here. They just wanted what I did for them. So I decided right then and there to stop. Not with fireworks, not with a screaming match. Just a quiet withdrawal. No sabotage, no revenge. Just the removal of my invisible hands from the levers that kept their lives running. You see, every system in that house ran through me. The Wi-Fi password taped to the fridge I set it up. The streaming services logged in on their TV, my accounts. The mortgage payments that magically appeared as auto debits. I handled those renewals. The reminders for Dad's medical appointments. Mom's prescription, refills, even the dentist checkups. Those weren't the doctor's office calling. Those were my Google Calendar alerts buzzing in my pocket. They thought it was automatic. That's the curse of invisible work. It doesn't announce itself. It just happens until it doesn't. So when Dad told me I wasn't worth bragging about, when Mom confirmed it with a shrug, I realized I had a way to show them exactly what I was worth. Not by yelling, not by begging, but by disappearing from the machinery. Ask yourself, what would you do if your own parents made it clear that you were valuable only for your labor, never for your existence? Would you keep oiling the gears of their life while they told the world they had only one real child? Or would you step back and watch the gears grind to a halt? That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, the glow of the Wi-Fi router flickering across the room. For years, I'd been the ghost in the wires, the unseen operator. And for the first time, I considered what might happen if I just stopped. Stopped renewing the subscriptions. Stopped answering the panicked calls about why the printer won't connect. Stopped being the safety net they never admitted existed. The emptiness I'd felt earlier shifted into something colder, sharper. Not rage, just resolve. The next morning, I started with the simplest thing, changing the password on my Netflix account. It wasn't sabotage, it was ownership. And it was only the beginning. When people talk about favoritism, they usually picture it loud applause for one child, silence for the other. And yes, Sarah was the golden one. Her trophies lined the mantle. Her dance recitals filled scrapbooks. Her college acceptance letters were framed like museum pieces. Me, I was the quiet one. I liked computers, puzzles, things that hummed and blinked in ways other people ignored. At 15, I built a desktop from spare parts scavenged off Craigslist. When I showed it to Dad, he shrugged and said, "Just a phase. Don't spend too much time on it." That phase became the only reason my parents didn't collapse sooner. Because while Sarah was paraded at dinner parties, I was wiring the house together like a silent engineer. Every password, every renewal, every bill that didn't arrive in pink envelopes, I handled it. When Dad bragged to his buddies about how tech-savvy he was, I bit my tongue. Because the truth was, he didn't even know the Wi-Fi password. He thought Wi-Fi just existed, like oxygen. He never saw me on the phone with the ISP at midnight after a storm knocked out service, pleading with a half-asleep rep in another time zone. Mom told friends she had a good system for keeping up with doctor's appointments. That system was me syncing calendars, setting reminders, calling the pharmacy, making sure she never ran out of blood pressure pills. The mortgage autopay. Except autopay isn't magic. Someone sets it up, updates the expired cards, checks the emails to confirm the transactions. That someone was me. And the streaming services they left running all night, Netflix, Prime, Spotify, all tied to my accounts. My passwords, my credit card. I'd let it slide because it was easier than explaining how to get their own. That was my role, the invisible daughter. Not praised, not bragged about. But necessary, like electricity. You don't thank the wires in your walls. You just curse when the lights go out. So after the recliner incident, I decided to flip the breaker. Slowly, carefully, piece by piece. The first step was reclaiming my digital fingerprints. I opened my password manager and stared at the list, dozens of logins with their names attached all under my email. I began changing them, one by one. It wasn't dramatic. I didn't cut them off all at once. That would have been sabotage and attack. No, I wanted something quieter, more honest. I wanted them to feel the vacuum I left behind. Netflix logged out. Spotify account restored to individual. Prime Video removed all sub-profiles but mine. A small ripple, nothing earth-shattering. But I knew it would land. I also stopped checking their email for overdue bills. Mom's inbox was a disaster zone buried under promotional spam and chain letters. For years, I'd quietly filtered out the important stuff, paid things, before late fees stacked up. That week, I let the mess sit untouched. It felt surreal. Like pulling my own oxygen mask off and realizing I could still breathe. At first, I thought guilt would crush me, that I'd crumble and log back and reset, the password slip back into invisibility. But something else happened instead. I felt lighter. My evenings were suddenly mine. No panicked phone calls about the internet being hacked when really they just clicked the wrong button. No midnight emails from Dad asking why the printer wasn't connecting. No silent dread that if I didn't watch the whole house of cards would fall. Ask yourself this. If your entire worth in your family was tied to labor, they never acknowledged what would happen if you stopped. Would they see you differently? Or would they finally see you at all? For me, it wasn't about revenge. It was about truth. Truth has a way of surfacing when you stop covering it up. And so with every password I changed, every reminder I let expire, I wasn't punishing them. I was giving them their lives back. Exactly as they'd always claimed they wanted without me in the picture. But I knew it was only a matter of time before the silence broke. It started small. Always does. 3 days after I pulled the first thread, Dad texted me, "Netflix won't load. Some kind of error. Can you fix it?" I stared at the message for a long time. My thumbs hovered over the screen. For years, my reflex was automatic. Troubleshoot, reset, send, new login. But that night, I just put the phone face down. An hour later, a second text. "Your mother is upset. Says we can't watch anything. Please handle this. Handle this." Like I was their employee. Like my job was to patch holes in the life they didn't even realize I was holding together. I didn't respond. The next morning, Mom left me a voicemail. Her voice wasn't angry yet, just tight, a little annoyed. "Honey, the Wi-Fi isn't working. Your father keeps saying the router's broken. Can you pop by and take a look?" But the Wi-Fi wasn't broken. They just didn't know the password. I'd kept it saved on all their devices. But when the system rebooted after a storm the night before, it kicked them out. All they needed was the code taped to the side of the router. I'd shown them that a dozen times. But when you're used to a ghost, fixing everything before you notice even simple problems feel like emergencies. By the weekend, the panic sharpened. Sarah called me out of the blue. She sounded more irritated than concerned. "Mom says you're ignoring them. Dad's stressed pacing around. They can't log into their bank app. He thinks someone hacked them." "What's going on?" I said flatly. "Nothing's hacked. They just don't know their own logins." "Well, can't you just help them?" There it was again, that assumption. That my job was to step and smooth things over, keep everyone else comfortable? I told her no. For once I told her no, she went quiet like she couldn't process it. Then she snapped, "You're being cruel? Cruel? Me?" This after decades of being invisible, of fixing everything, while being told there was nothing to brag about when it came to me. Now the second I stop, I'm cruel. That word sat in my chest like a stone. But I didn't cave. By week 2, the cracks widened. They couldn't figure out how to pay their mortgage online. The bill came in the mail, but Dad didn't know the answers to the security questions. I'd set those up years ago. He couldn't reset the password without my email or phone number. The internet went down again. 2 full days of no Netflix, no Prime, no Spotify humming through the speakers. Sarah told me they sat in silence, confused and anxious like the house itself was betraying them. At one point, Mom called her sister insisting they'd been hacked. She even told neighbors the same story. The idea that their own daughter had simply stopped saving them never crossed their minds. By week 3, the first apology landed, if you can call it that. An email from Dad. "We didn't mean to upset you. You're always helpful. I appreciate the chair. Let's not make this a big thing. Love, Dad." No apology, no acknowledgement of what he said on his birthday. The words that ripped the last threads of my patience. Just a vague pat on the head, hoping I'd reset everything like always. I didn't. Instead, I made it harder. The shared Google Calendar, deleted. That meant no reminders for appointments, no alerts for prescription refills, no notifications about insurance deadlines. Those were all under my account. It wasn't sabotage. I wasn't destroying anything. I was simply giving them what they claimed they always wanted, independence. And the more I pulled back, the clearer things became. I wasn't cruel. I wasn't vindictive. I was just gone. And without me, their carefully curated image of stability began to unravel. I thought maybe Sarah would step up, fill the role. But she lived 3 hours away with kids and a husband. She wasn't going to drive home every time the printer blinked an error message. She wasn't going to sit on the phone with the bank for 2 hours, trying to reset a password her father never cared to remember. So they floundered. And for the first time, I realized just how much of their life was stitched together with my invisible labor. The golden child had the spotlight, but I was the scaffolding. And scaffolding doesn't get noticed until it's gone. By week 4, the tone of their messages shifted. Gone was the annoyance, the entitled demands. What replaced them was something shakier, thinner, like the first cracks spreading through glass. My phone lit up with another voicemail from Mom. Her voice trembled in a way I had never heard before. "Sweetheart, we don't know what's happening. Your father's stressed. He's not sleeping. Please just... Can you call us back? We need your help." Not an apology, not even close, just need. It made me laugh bitter and low. They didn't miss me. They missed the quiet machine I'd built around them. The safety net that let them live without ever knowing what held them up. That night, Sarah showed up unannounced at my apartment. She knocked, then stood in the hallway like she had every right to be there. "Open the door. We need to talk." I didn't move. She sighed, her voice muffled through the wood. "They're your parents. They're old. You're punishing them, and it's cruel. You're hurting people who love you." That line almost made me laugh out loud. Love me. The people who told me there was nothing to brag about in having me as a child. The father who wished out loud I had been born someone else. I stayed silent. Eventually, she gave up muttering something about me acting childish before stomping down the hall. But here's the thing. Silence was power. When I was little, silence meant I was invisible, forgotten, overlooked. Now silence was a choice, a weapon, a boundary I finally had the courage to enforce. 2 days later, a letter arrived not from them, but from a lawyer's office. My parents wanted to amend their living trust. Remove me as successor trustee. Perfect. When the lawyer called for my signature, I didn't even hesitate. "Send me the papers. I'll sign whatever." He sounded surprised. "You don't want to contest?" I laughed. Why would I contest being cut out of something I never mattered and click? Done. I pictured them scrambling, thinking they'd finally cut me off, finally erase me from their little narrative. But they didn't realize I was never holding on. They were. Still, the escalation didn't stop. A week later, a dad called me directly. First time in months. I let it go to voicemail, then played it back. His voice was small. Not the booming authority I grew up with, not the cold dismissal of my birthday dinner. Just small. "We're having trouble with the insurance. Something expired. Your mother doesn't know what to do. Please call me. I'm asking you nicely." That one almost cracked me. Almost. But then I remembered the nights I cried over ramen because I couldn't afford real groceries while they remodeled their kitchen with my money. The years I walked to work in the rain because I couldn't afford car payments while they drove brand new luxury cars. I remembered every sacrifice I made, believing I was just unlucky while they siphoned my trust fund dry. So no, I didn't call him back. I sat on my couch listening to the silence of my apartment, and for the first time in years, the silence didn't sting. It soothed. It was proof that I no longer existed to them as a tool, a technician, a silent disappointment they could exploit. They were unraveling. Slowly, painfully. And the best part, I wasn't doing anything. No sabotage, no revenge plots, just absence. And absence was louder than any screaming match could ever be. It was Sarah who broke first. Not me, not the parents who pretended they didn't need me. Sarah, the golden child, the one they measured me against my whole life, finally saw what I'd been carrying. She called late one night. I almost didn't pick up, but something in me wanted to hear her voice, wanted to know what excuse she'd come up with this time. When I answered, she sounded different. Not sharp, not dismissive, just tired. "I flew in this weekend," she said quietly. "They didn't tell you, did they?" I didn't respond. "They're a mess," she continued. "The house looks like a storm hit it. Mom's got unopened bills stacked on the dining table. Dad forgot his blood pressure appointment. The city sent a letter about a missed water bill. It's bad." I sat there in silence, letting her words hang in the air. She sighed. "I didn't know how much you were doing for them." That one cut deep, not because it was cruel, but because it was the first time anyone had said it out loud. For years, I was invisible. The disappointment, the ghost that fixed things quietly while Sarah collected the spotlight. And now here she was, admitting she'd never noticed the scaffolding I held around our parents. "I think they used you," she said finally. And I didn't help. I didn't know how to respond. My chest tightened equal parts vindication and grief. Because she was right. Sarah hesitated before adding, "I found something else too. Dad applied for a loan, messed up the income numbers, missed a credit card payment, tanked his score." "Okay," I said flatly. And then her voice cracked. "He tried to use your name as a cosigner without telling you." I froze. "He still had your details from the refinance paperwork years ago," she explained. "Thought he could sneak it through. But the bank flagged it." He panicked. My stomach churned. Not just at the violation, but at the arrogance. Even now, especially now, he thought I existed as a tool. I whispered, "And what happened? They couldn't get the loan. But, Caitlin, do you know what Mom said?" I braced myself. "She said they're scared of you now." That sentence lodged in my chest like a shard of glass. Scared of me. All my life, I had been the one afraid of them. Afraid of disappointing them, of never being enough, of being cast aside like a defective product. Now they were the ones afraid. And for the first time, I felt something I couldn't name. Power. Not joy, not triumph, just power. Sarah's voice trembled again. "I don't know what to do. I can't fix this for them. Not like you did. They're drowning Caitlin." "Let them drown," I whispered. Silence stretched across the line. Finally, she said, "I don't think I can keep helping them either." And in that moment, I realized the golden child had cracked. The pedestal she'd been placed on was crumbling, and she was finally standing where I had stood my entire life, shouldering responsibility she didn't ask for, staring at parents who took and took until nothing was left. Only now does she understand, and only now was it too late. 2 days after Sarah's call, I opened my mailbox and saw an envelope with my mother's handwriting. Not email, not a text, not one of Dad's stiff voicemails. A letter. The paper was shaky, the ink uneven, like she had written it with trembling hands. For a second, I thought about tossing it in the trash without opening it. But curiosity won. Inside, just a few lines. You've made your point. We understand that you are hurt. We miss you. We didn't know how much you were doing. Please come back. We need you. No apology, no responsibility. No mention of what they had said that night or the years of silence and comparison. Just please. And that single word changed everything, though not in the way they imagined. For the first time in my life, they had admitted weakness. Not directly, not cleanly, but enough. They were begging me. Me, the child, they dismissed, the one who was never enough. They were finally forced to see the truth. I folded the letter and slid it into my desk drawer. Didn't respond. Didn't send an answer. Just left it there, like evidence in a trial I no longer cared to attend. Because it wasn't about them anymore. The power had shifted, and I realized I didn't want anything from them, not love, not validation, not even a proper apology. I had already built peace in the silence. Still, the timing of the letter felt deliberate. Sarah had cracked, Dad had been flagged by the bank. The house was crumbling. They weren't reaching out because they loved me. They were reaching out because they were desperate. And desperation isn't love, it's hunger. That night, I sat alone in my apartment staring at the letter under the lamplight. For years, I would have done anything for a note like this, just to be seen, just to be asked. But now it felt hollow. Ask yourself, what would you do if the people who raised you only came crawling back when their world collapsed without you? Would you run to them, arms open because blood is thicker than water? Or would you sit still, finally free, watching from a distance, as the tower you used to hold up comes tumbling down? I chose stillness. And as I closed the drawer, I realized the real shift wasn't in them, it was in me. For the first time, I wasn't chasing scraps. For the first time, they were the ones asking, and I was the one who could say no. It started with a bill. A thin white envelope slipped under my door from the credit card company. I almost didn't open it. I thought it was just another monthly statement, another reminder of survival. But when I tore it open, I froze. The recliner. The same chair I had bought for Dad's birthday. The gift that should have meant comfort, respect, even love. Instead, he had looked me in the eye and said he wished I was more like Sarah. There was still a balance, $743 left. I stared at the number until it blurred. All this time, I had been paying off the symbol of my own humiliation. The chair was sitting in their living room like a throne while I was eating noodles and counting quarters for laundry. Something snapped. I picked up the phone and called the store. My voice was steady, calm, almost pleasant. If I bought a recliner as a gift and the recipient doesn't want it anymore, can I have it picked up? The rep put me on hold, came back and said yes. There would be a small restocking fee, but the refund would go straight back to my card. How long do I have to decide, I asked. 120 days, he replied. I checked the calendar. It had been 117. 3 days left. I smiled for the first time in weeks. Scheduled the pickup. 2 days later, a truck pulled into my parents' driveway. I didn't go. I stayed home, waiting by my phone. The delivery guy called me with a laugh in his voice. Lady here said her husband doesn't know we're taking it. She says it's your chair. Wants us to take it fast. Go ahead, I told him. An hour later, he texted me a photo. The chair was gone, the living room stripped bare, except for a sagging old armchair they had dragged out of storage. That night, my voicemail pinged. It was Mom. Her voice was sharp, almost shrill. That was petty. Beneath you. Your father is humiliated. You've made your point. What more do you want from us? I sat in the dark, listening to her words echo. Humiliated. Petty. But all I heard was this. They finally felt what I had felt all along. Because that chair wasn't just a piece of furniture. It was a monument. Every time Dad sat in it, I knew he was leaning back on my sacrifice, my money, my effort, my love, and he still wished I was someone else. Taking it back wasn't about revenge. It was about balance. About removing the last symbol of me giving and them taking without gratitude. Ask yourself if you could reclaim the one thing that represented every dismissal, every wound, would you or would you leave it there? A reminder that you were the fool who kept giving. I didn't want reminders. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like the fool. After the recliner was gone, I thought the story was over. But it wasn't. Because tucked away in my closet was a folder. Thick, worn at the edges, stuffed with papers I had collected over the years. I didn't even realize what I was building at the time. It started as simple self-defense. Copies of forms, printouts of bills, screenshots of emails, proof that I had been the one holding everything together. That night, I pulled the folder out and spread everything across my dining table. The site was overwhelming. Bank statements with my name listed as primary contact. Utility bills I had set up, streaming subscriptions under my email, even the refinance documents my parents had shoved at me years ago with a casual, "Just sign here, you're good with details?" I remembered that day vividly. They hadn't read a word of what they were signing. They just trusted me to manage it. And I had carefully, legally, but not naively. Buried in those papers was a clause. Not power of attorney, not control. Just one small line giving me notification rights. It meant the bank had to alert me if the loan ever went into default or missed more than 2 payments. At the time, I thought of it as a safety net. Something to protect them to protect me. I never expected it to matter. But last month, it had triggered. The bank emailed me, notice of delinquency. 3 payments missed. 15 days to respond. All I had to do was confirm receipt. No obligation to pay, just acknowledge the truth. And I did. Then I printed the notice, slid it into my folder, and sat back. My hands were shaking not with fear, but with something colder. A sense of inevitability. Because here was the reality, my parents had built their lives on a foundation I had quietly maintained. And when I stepped away, the cracks became craters. The house wasn't just falling apart, it was already gone. I thought about sending the papers straight to Sarah. Part of me wanted her to see just how deep this went. But another part of me hesitated. She was already caught in the fallout, already waking up to the truth. Still, the evidence was there. Proof of every silent hour I had spent keeping their lives from collapsing. Proof of every lie they told themselves about me being the disappointment. I stared at the refinance clause again. They had signed it without even reading. Because that's who they were, people who dismissed me, underestimated me, and relied on me in the same breath. And now, that underestimation had become their undoing. Ask yourself, what would you do with a paper trail like this? Would you use it to crush them completely? Or would you tuck it back into the folder, satisfied that you finally had the receipts, even if no one ever saw them? That night, I did neither. I left everything spread out across the table, lit only by the dim glow of the lamp, and I went to bed. Because sometimes, the heaviest revenge is the one you don't even have to lift a finger for. 2 weeks after the bank notice, Sarah called again. Her voice was shaky, drained. They might lose the house, she said, without any buildup. No greeting, no small talk, just the blunt edge of reality. I already knew. The bank's emails were precise default proceedings, foreclosure timeline, the whole machine grinding forward. But hearing it from Sarah made it real in a different way. I know, I said. My voice was calm, almost detached. Sarah didn't yell. She didn't defend them this time. Instead, she sighed long and heavy. They brought this on themselves. I can't stop it. I won't. Not after everything they did to you and to me. Her voice cracked on that last word. And suddenly I realized something had shifted. She wasn't the golden child anymore. She wasn't the one they could lean on while discarding me. She was caught in the collapse too, and for the first time, she wasn't blaming me for stepping away. That night, I drove past their street. The lights were out. The lawn was uncut, a crooked for sale sign tilted in the wind, half buried in dead grass. The house that had once been their pride, their fortress of superiority, was crumbling into a husk. I didn't stop. I didn't even slow down. I just kept driving, a strange mix of emptiness and release washing over me. Because this wasn't sabotage. I hadn't pushed them. I had simply stepped aside. Gravity had done the rest. Days later, a final email came from Dad. No subject line, just one sentence. We never thought you'd do this to us. I laughed out loud in my kitchen, a sharp sound that startled even me. They still didn't get it. I hadn't done anything to them. I just stopped saving them. And maybe that was the cruelest truth of all. Ask yourself, if your whole family's survival depended on your invisible labor, and you stopped, would you be the villain? Or would you finally be free? The bank seized the house within a month. My parents moved into a small apartment across town. No lawn, no status, no recliner. Just 4 walls and silence. Sarah told me they were smaller somehow, diminished. She didn't say it with pity, just recognition. They're scared of you now, she whispered once, like it was a secret too fragile to speak out loud. And maybe they were. Because when the person you've ignored your whole life finally walks away and you realize they were the only thing keeping you afloat, fear is the only thing left. I thought silence would be the ending. But endings, it seems, always need punctuation. For me, it came in the shape of a cardboard box. I had been staring at the folder on my desk for weeks. The stack of papers, screenshots, and receipts that mapped out my invisible labor. Every bill I had paid, every login I had created, every system I had kept alive without thanks. One night, I opened the drawer, pulled it all out, and began to assemble the story. Not in words, but in proof. I photocopied the refinance agreement, the one they hadn't bothered to read before signing. I highlighted the clause that gave me notification rights. Their initials were there page after page, like signatures on their own undoing. I printed the emails, the subscription renewals, the spreadsheets of mortgage payments I had covered in 2021 when they were short but never asked for help. I even included screenshots of texts, Wi-Fi down. Again, Netflix won't load. Can you fix it? Simple little messages that added up to years of quiet servitude. And on top, taped neatly, I placed the final receipt for the recliner. $1,098, $62. Paid in full. I sealed the box with heavy tape, wrote their address in block letters, and mailed it. No note, no explanation, just evidence. 2 weeks later, Sarah called. They got it. Her voice was flat. Mom opened it first. She cried. Dad just stared. He didn't say a word, not one. I pictured them sitting at their small apartment table, staring at the documents. For once, there was no way to twist the story, no way to call me dramatic or ungrateful. The proof was right there, undeniable, stacked higher than any lie they could tell themselves. They had built their lives on me, and now they couldn't deny it. But here's the strange thing. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel victorious. I just felt done. Ask yourself, what would you do with the receipts of your own erasure? Would you hold them close as proof that you weren't crazy? Or would you send them back like a mirror, forcing the people who broke you to see what they had built? I chose the mirror. And once the box left my hands, so did the weight. I never heard from them again. After the box, the silence became permanent. No calls, no emails, not even one of Mom's clipped messages. They disappeared into their own consequences and I let them. But Sarah stayed. She didn't defend them anymore. She didn't call me dramatic or accuse me of punishing them. Instead, she started texting small things. A photo of her kids drawing an update about her job, a question about computer software. Nothing heavy. Nothing about the wreckage of our parents. Just life. And that, strangely, was enough. One afternoon, over coffee, she admitted what I'd been waiting years to hear. I think I protected them because it was easier than seeing the truth. But you were right. They used you. They used me too in different ways. I didn't know how to respond. I just nodded. Sometimes, acknowledgement is more powerful than an apology. Slowly, we built something resembling a sibling bond. Not golden child and shadow. Not favored and forgotten. Just two adults finally free from a script we never wrote. Meanwhile, I built my own life. Work was steady. My apartment felt like a sanctuary, not a hiding place. I cooked meals that smelled like comfort. I bought furniture piece by piece, nothing grand, but all mine. Sometimes I would open my drawer and see Mom's letter. The shaky words, "Please come back. We need you." I kept it not as a wound, but as proof of transformation. Proof that they had finally seen me, even if it came too late. Do I forgive them? That's the question people always ask. Here's the truth. Forgiveness isn't the same as access. I can forgive in my heart without opening the door again. Forgiveness doesn't erase the years of silence, the comparisons, the theft of my peace. It just means I no longer carry their weight. Ask yourself, what would you do if the people who raised you finally broke under their own lies? Would you reach down to lift them, or would you let them lie in the ruins they made? I chose to walk forward. Not out of anger, out of clarity. I drive by their old house sometimes. The lawn's overgrown, the for sale signs still crooked. A ghost of a life they couldn't hold together. And I remind myself, I wasn't the broken one. I was the glue. And when I finally stopped holding, they cracked. The aftermath isn't clean. It's not tied up in a bow, but it's mine. And for the first time, so is my peace. Thank you for watching until the end. If this story resonated, please like, subscribe, and drop a comment. Would you go back to fix things or let them face the fallout?